It's 8:42 on the 9th of December, 2021 in Beijing, and it's 7:42
on the East Coast of the United States.
That's right, and it's the MTT News of the Week, so welcome everyone. It's great to have you back. It's great for you to join us.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jen, for joining us again. We're going to be covering, as we do every time, the headlines of the week, as well as news from communist parties and some analysis on that too. So this week, we've got some interesting bits and bobs. We're going to be discussing a massacre in India of people that has happened by the military. Jen will be covering that from us with a statement from the Communist Party of India. We also have the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing 2020 Winter Olympics. We'll go into that. Merkel has now officially bowed out. Angela Merkel has bowed out as the Chancellor of Germany. So we'll have that, and we'll play a song that she requested, an interesting East German punk band song. Putin and Biden met this week, had a video chat, so we'll be going into that, talking about the geopolitics of that. Jamal Khashoggi, the investigation into his murder. There was an arrest in France related to that. Then we also see Aung San Suu Kyi was sentenced for various reasons. We'll go into that, her going back to jail in Burma, or Myanmar, I should say. Of course, in the US, there's another school shooting, but this one has an interesting element relating to the parents, which we'll cover. The Palestinian jailbreak. There was a massive jailbreak of Palestinian people who got out of an Israeli jail, and we'll cover that too. And Lithuania has been delisted as has been diplomatically shunned for its efforts relating to Taiwan. And of course, we'll also be covering, on a lesser extent, the Omicron variant, as well as how we need basically booster jabs in order to combat it. And also we'll just discuss that briefly. But yeah, Jen, go ahead. You can start. I believe you're going to cover the massacre, this massacre that's happened in India. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So we're going to open up with the statement from the CP of India, and then we will go into how the entire event and the context has been unfolding. So this is a statement by the CP of India. CPI deplores the killing of 15 civilians in Nagaland. The National Secretariat of the Communist Party of India issued the following statement on December the 6th, 2 days ago, 2021, deploring the killing of 15 civilians in Nagaland. The National Secretariat of the Communist Party of India condemns the killing of 15 civilians and 1 security personnel in Nagaland. The Union Home Minister must answer to the nation on these repeated failures of intelligence, resulting in the loss of the lives of our fellow countrymen in different parts of the country, including Jammu and Kashmir. The party demands an impartial inquiry into the entire incident. The government, Prime Minister, and Home Minister should be responsible for the lack of transparency surrounding the issue of Nagaland and the Naga talks. The political and social turmoil that prevails in the Northeast also demand the repeal of Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Acronym is AFSPA from the statute book, as it is evident that AFSPA has failed in restoring normalcy in the region. The party feels that it is high time the government realizes that government and military cannot solve people's problems. So, people, for everyone that's listening, people might notice some peculiarities in the statement.
Sure.
So,
what do you notice there? Yeah.
Yeah. So the first, the part about why is it 15 civilians and 1 security personnel? Why is it intelligence failures? Repeated failures in intelligence. Well, apparently, according to Indian media, how the event happened is that in the northeastern India region, where ethnic tension, political tension, military tension is very high.
Yeah.
India deploys, the special powers, the armed forces,
Right. Yes. The armed
towards
forces
the
special
region,
power.
right?
Yeah.
And just I would suspect that due to racism, essentially the ethnic minorities there of East Asian appearance, essentially people of Tibetan descent, uh, are kind of seen as kind of lesser, right? And so what it is a bus carrying a bus full of mine miners, coming home from work, were somehow judged as a bus full of terrorists and insurgents, and without any kind of clarity or attempt to like even investigate or interrogate, the security forces, the special forces, just opened fire
Wow.
at the bus. That's the original massacre.
I see.
So after that, the local people were of course enraged.
Yeah.
And well, hello to first audience.
That's James.
Yeah.
Hello.
And started staging protests, in which the Indian security forces opened up fire yet again into the crowd. And so the death from these two consecutive shootings, massacres, resulted in total the death of 15 civilians.
Right.
And later on, due to the fact that the local people felt that this was a kind of racially based kind of act of massacre, they decided that they are going to form essentially something kind of akin to like a self-defense league,
Militia or something like that.
militia of sorts, right? And in retaliation, they burned down an army camp belonging to the Indian military forces, which resulted in the death of one security personnel, as in a soldier, in that camp. So far, that is everything that's been happening in that event alone. And of course, we will talk about there's even more crazy events, yet another crazy event happening in India. But yeah, so far that's so far that's the gist of the story. Well, the second part of essentially the context of India that has happened only a few days ago is the death of General Bipin Rawat.
Yeah, the chief of defense staff.
Yeah, exactly. He's the chief of staff of the entire Indian army. Not the whole armed forces, just the ground force. Killed in a helicopter crash amongst, I believe, all 13 others, including his wife and other crew members, so on and so forth. Killed in a helicopter crash. The stated reason apparently is that they flew into a sudden appearance of like very thick fog, very low visibility, and the helicopter crashed because of that. From what we know about this general, he is one of the more kind of hawk-ish side of the Indian military and political scene. He is one of the kind of people that went to a lot of military academies, was born into the aristocracy, top of the class, that kind of stuff. So not to draw too much of comparison, but a bit like Mike Pompeo,
Sure,
although
sure,
not
sure.
exactly.
So he's, I mean, I get, yes, so kind of you just say upper class aristocracy, if we want to
Yeah,
use that term,
yeah,
a bit more hawkish. So, I mean, in some ways, I guess perhaps it's positive that maybe a less hawkish replacement might come into place. But
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just means that last week we covered the Indian farmer peasants
Sure. Yeah, the victory
uprising.
by the yes, the victory by the
Right.
Indian farmers, their long struggle against the
Uh-huh.
local government to get guarantees for their crops. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So with all three of these events happening in very quick succession, one after the other,
Mm, mm,
I would say that that marks a fundamental shift. Well, okay, if the Indian government's establishment had any common sense,
mm,
should mark a fundamental change in the entire political kind of strategic landscape of
mm.
India and
Yeah,
the entire kind of military political landscape of the region between
yeah,
India, Pakistan, Kashmir, India and China, so on and so forth, India and Nepal, so on and so forth, right?
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
essentially, like, are you able to, with all of this, still maintain the kind of aggressive expansionist policy that's been, adopted ever since the day of its independence, where
Mhm.
kind of India saw itself as the successor of the British
British
colonial
Raj.
legacy, so on and so
That's right.
forth. Right.
Sure, sure, sure. I think what's interesting, yeah, I guess it depends who the replacement will be of this guy.
Mhm.
And as you already said with the first story about the ethnic tensions that are happening right now in India. I mean, we've had Yanis Iqbal on the podcast talk about this idea of Hindu nationalism, and
Mhm.
he used the term neo-fascism of
Right.
the leader of the leader of the BJP party of the president of India.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, there's also been a number of stories of the last year about how an entire region was stripped of citizenship effectively. They were
Mhm.
obviously a part of the Muslim minority that lives
Right.
on near Bangladesh. And then
Mhm.
also we've had these things with the farmers, as you said, the BJP having to actually concede that one after one of the sons of one of the local BJP government representatives drove his car into one of
Mhm.
the farmers' barricades, and that really put that strike reached that sort of you know heated moment, that sort of dramatic moment. But yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider that I was reading this week is that, of course, if we look at the bigger geopolitics of the situation, that India has signed a deal for S-400 air
Ah,
defense system. So that's
yes.
a the famous Russian air defense
Right.
system that.
That's a part of a massive
Yeah,
arms deal agreement of sorts
right.
with Russia.
Right, right,
Yeah.
and that obviously plays into a lot of the obviously if we're talking about this term that we love, the Indo-Pacific, India, that the US and the UK and maybe even Australia are trying to bring India into that side. They've called it the Quad.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
different words for this, but
Right.
it's not such an easy exchange. In the Indian military is, I mean, sorry, it wasn't a deal for S-400s. Apologies. It was a deal for Kalashnikovs, a huge deal
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
purchase Kalashnikovs from Russia.
That was the two main items of this deal.
Right, right,
It was
right, right.
100,000 plus Kalashnikov rifles.
Huge amount, huge amount. That
Right,
was one.
and several 8 brigades worth, I believe, of
Of
S-400.
S-400.
However much
Right,
that is.
right, right, right. So when we consider the sort of West's attempts to try and bring India into their fold, under their side, it's awkward for them because the Indian military, whether it's tanks or aircraft or arms, as we're talking about, is very much integrated with Russian technology and with Russia. There's a big partnership, arms
Yeah.
partnership, deal partnership.
Um, there is a bit more nuance to that.
No, no, of course, it's not that
Mhm.
simple.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Essentially, we want to look at two things. One is the S-400. The back in God, how many years ago is this now? 2019-ish, I would 2020-ish, I would say. Um, Turkey, originally wanted to purchase American F-35 fighters and even F-22. When the United States declined that, Turkey started purchasing S-400 system from Russia. And what that led to is it was the first kind of it was literally the beginning of the decline of Turkey-U.S. relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the main thing is any kind of surveillance or defense system that has to do with air defense, the larger and the more sophisticated it is, the more kind of computerized and also
integrated.
long range it is. So what it does is it has the ability to for the thing to be able to work, it would automatically give the user the ability to record and send the data to whichever country that produced them, the patterns, characteristics, traits, so on and so forth, of whatever equipment you're working with. Not just radar signature, mind you, also like radio frequencies that the jets tends to use. So what that means is that when you have a Russian system turned on, but you're flying, say, American jets, then the radio frequencies and that the American jets use, what these jets look like on the radar screen, so on and so forth, what these jets tend to do, how do they tend to fly, so on and so forth, gets sent to Russia very easily. This is the classic ploy that the U.S., UK, France does with their so-called allies. Just puppet states. When Russia gets to do it, they are completely infuriated, right? So that's why the declining relationship happened. So I'm curious in seeing if that's going to happen with India.
Exactly. It'll be curious to see what happens with
it. And second, very short anecdotal point is just that the Indian military has literally, I believe, weapons from all around the world. Any kind of small arms up to like the biggest weapons, jets, ships, so on and so forth, is they have stuff from. It's 70% Russian overall, but among everything, there are Russian, there are British, there are American, there are French, there are Korean, South Korean. So on and so forth. So it's a complete mixed bag and just a nightmare for their kind of management, logistics, people. So on and so forth.
I'm sure they have to get lots of parts, and if they don't make them themselves, so and also it makes their diplomacy actually quite awkward because they can't piss off everyone because we've pissed off the people that make our tanks. Oh no, we pissed off the people that make our jets.
Precisely.
So it spells the reason that it's good to have maybe make your own stuff, but at the same time, it means that all your eggs aren't in one basket, which means you can have your own. You can have your own line. So, for example, India doesn't have to worry too much about pissing off, America because they don't rely on them entirely for arms, as much as the Europeans do, for example, or NATO does, for example. So, you can have a bit more of an independent voice because you have multiple partners. But anyway, let's actually jump into the world of diplomacy. So we've got a number of stories that come from that. So we've got the diplomatic boycott, we've got the Putin and Biden meeting, and we also have the Lithuanians causing a lot of trouble themselves. So I think these are all related to China, all three of these stories. So let's take a look quick. Let's start with Lithuania. They've got themselves into quite a bit of trouble. So the story is that, of course, they, began the process of considering to open an office in Taiwan, a diplomatic office.
No, a Taiwan diplomatic office in Lithuania.
Lithuania, okay, right. So good. This does actually, interestingly enough, we did talk about this a month ago when the EU sent the parliamentary team to Taiwan. So I mean, at the time we thought it was just a minor thing, and perhaps maybe there's more to it. Then maybe the EU, maybe not collectively, but elements of the EU are are toying with this idea of Taiwan and playing with the one China policy. So yeah, but I mean the effects are heavy. The repercussions are heavy.
Yeah.
China has not come down lightly on little Lithuania there. So actually, just tell us what have they done so far?
Sure. After the kind of like you said, after this whole thing that has been in development for a month now, China essentially has been taking this kind of step-by-step approach, where it kind of gave like Lithuania this kind of like diplomatic protest. No response from the other side, or like the response you'll get is like, "Oh, we will defend the values of freedom, democracy to the end." Well, you keep getting that kind of stuff. China just kind of stepped up their countermeasures. It has gotten to the point where, well, as of right now, two major things happened. One is all Chinese businesses and associated Chinese supply chain companies has stopped essentially all trade with Lithuania. That was followed after by essentially a more severe version of the same thing. The Chinese Port Authority has decided to delete Lithuania from their essentially database. So no more goods or anything, human or material, going into or out of Lithuania. Coming from Lithuania or going to Lithuania. That has caused some panic in Lithuania, and this is followed by the second thing, which is China and Germany has decided that the Cross-Continental Railway between China and Europe through the Middle East and Russia, and of course Africa, of course, with the whole One Belt One Road initiative, is no longer going to pass through Lithuania. It was that was how it was planned. It was going to go through the three Baltic nations, but no, not anymore. So this is quite severe.
No, yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at the bigger trend here, this is almost a regression in some senses, because the one China policy, was it Nixon that became the standard? Yes. So we're talking about something that was agreed in the 1970s, and also even at the UN. That seat, the UN, the Security Center seat was taken by the PRC. 50 years ago, maybe more than 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is really a backward step. I mean, on
that story, there is a thing that now that you've brought it up, I have to bring it up. During the early 2000s, when the Taiwan populist independence candidate Chen Shui-bian got elected.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, that was when that was when George W. Bush Jr. was still the president, right?
Okay.
He essentially, after seeing how the entire party, the Green Party in Taiwan, that was pro-independence and all this stuff, kind of just like shredded the one nation policy to pieces. He visited there and famously called Chen Shui-bian, the president of the Taiwan island.
Republic.
Yeah. He called him son of on TV live.
So just to clarify, that was
Bush called Chen Shui-bian son of a on TV, on live TV. And it was and the Taiwanese TV broadcast services didn't have time to edit it out. So what they had to do is like they had to translate it into like son of a like a beach coast. And the translation, the subtitles on Taiwanese television was 沙滩之子.
So
son of
Okay,
Yes.
that's where. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's at least for the Chinese speaking world, that's where that meme came from.
Mm.
So since you mentioned the whole history of the one China policy, I have to do it as well.
Right. No, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Just to wrap this one up, in terms of that trend, in recent years, nations that have recognized, the one China policy and Beijing's stance on this, Panama, El Salvador, and the Dominican Republic have been, that's the numbers, right? It's definitely going the other way and has been for decades. Other sort of repercussions that we might have missed. They've halted freight trains going to Lithuania and also stopped issuing food export permits. And yes, just to clarify, so I think I might have said that they were considering withdrawing. That they have both. China has degraded or downgraded the status to charged affair, and then of course they've also asked. Yeah, that's correct. They've asked. The Lithuanians have removed their representative, and the Chinese have removed theirs too. So both ambassadors are gone.
Yeah.
Poor diplomats have lost their jobs. But anyway, that was that element of the story, the Lithuanian-Taiwan story. Of course, let's talk about, in more diplomacy news, the boycott, the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. So I think I was speaking to some people about this, and it's one of these things that it's really just a paper tiger, let's call it that, where it's something that's just purely words. None of these people would have even. I mean, these weren't athletes. We're not talking about an athletic boycott of the Olympics. We're talking about just diplomats. So, and bear in mind, with COVID and quarantines and all of those elements that would have to be considered if these diplomats even came here, or even if they use the ones that are already here. It's just a very tokenistic sort of.
For sure.
Yeah.
And compared to everything else that we've already covered and we're going to cover today, that just seems so silly.
and I think also it goes quite well if we consider that the diplomatic boycott is obviously based on the fact that they want to stand against the allegations of human rights abuses and the Xinjiang situation. They're doing that at the same time. To one of the stories from this week is also that Jamal Khashoggi's murder, in the investigation there's been an arrest in France of a man related to it, which we need more information to sort of cover. But where's the diplomatic repercussions for that? And also at the same time, the US being concerned about the human rights and the sort of rights of Muslims, particularly, is quite laughable. If we consider Palestine, if we consider Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, and basically the entire Middle East and maybe even Yemen. So I mean, it's a ridiculous statement or ridiculous position, particularly for the US to have. The Putin-Biden meeting. So anything interesting come out of that? What are your thoughts on that?
More paper tiger. So the statement basically goes that Putin wants NATO to stop eastward expansion, which makes perfect sense. In modern, again, with the whole air defense system thing, NATO has been putting up air quotes defense systems right up against the border of Russia for the longest time. I mean, this kind of how bad is it? Well, I can't speak on the Eastern European situation specifically, but let's take the THAAD system, the thermal high altitude air defense system.
Oh, right.
In South Korea, for example.
Yes.
Once the radar system for that thing is turned on, which the United States deployed there because they want to, stop DPRK, North Korean ballistic missiles, whatever. 1/3 of all flights, any aerial activities whatsoever at all of China, the eastern 1/3, and all of Korea, and a huge part of Siberia is completely under U.S. surveillance.
Right.
As soon as they turn that thing on.
Wow.
So when you have that, how is that fair for Russia, right?
Right.
And now the Union State. So the Putin said no more eastern expansion. Biden basically said, don't attack Ukraine. And I think the statement used was the meeting was
Right.
sincere and direct.
Yeah.
In diplomatic language, that means like nothing got done. There was no
Yeah.
agreement.
So even the Chinese perspective, Global Times says candid and tough-toned. So yeah. So I mean, just on the specifics though, so that there is a talk about Biden did say that they'll go above and beyond. They'll send more material if Russia invades. So this was about Ukraine and I guess to a lesser extent Belarus. About that sort of
tough luck, really. Ukraine is not a NATO country.
Right.
So like the NATO mutual defense treaty doesn't apply on Ukraine. I mean,
yes.
really, how much is NATO going to commit to that? And so it's actually the more interesting statement out of that. Is actually not by Biden himself. It was by specifically. I'm sorry, help me with this. What's the name of the current Secretary of State of the United States?
The current one, it's for God's sake, Lincoln. No,
Blinken. Yes.
Blinken.
Coming out of Blinken, essentially Secretary Blinken, which basically said, if China and Russia simultaneously, Russia taking Ukraine and China taking Taiwan, then it would be a grave mistake. Militarily, would it be a grave mistake? Can the United States, at the state that it's currently being in right now, can it stop it? I mean, right now there's talks of the United States even pulling out of Iraq because it is so overstretched.
I mean, just on the specifics of this story, which is Ukraine, right? I think there's quite a funny thing that I've just picked up on the Global Times. So, talking about military threats, the U.S. Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland said in a briefing on Tuesday, blah, 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 something about Russia being isolated from the global financial system, and Russian business people not being able to travel and trade, so threatening them. But I don't know if you remember who Victoria Nuland is. Does that name ring a bell to you or not?
Unfortunately, no.
Victoria Nuland is the U.S. Diplomat, let's call it that, who was in Ukraine during the Maidan crisis, during the Maidan, let's call it coup, revolution, counter-revolution, I don't know. But the Maidan situation back in 2014, which overthrew the government at the time and put in the new Ukrainian regime, where this all basically started. She was the diplomat in Ukraine at the time. And she is the one who famously they recorded her, or a recording was published of her on the phone to, I can't remember who, some local, I don't know, US diplomatic apparatus, but she's on the phone and she's the one that famously said the line of F the EU. We'll patch this together with Klitschko, we'll patch this together, we'll get Ban Ki-moon to fly in, we'll get Biden to come in and do this, we'll get these guys and this guys, and we'll patch this thing together and F the EU. That's the woman. That's Victoria Nuland, the one who and
Biden Jr. to make more scam money in Ukraine.
Right. So she's the. I don't even know how she's still a diplomat in the region. Particularly if she's on the border of the EU. After that famous phone call where you heard Empire building itself, or the backings of the sort of behind the scenes, behind the curtains, Empire just. But anyway, okay. I mean, it's still quite a, it's ratcheting up. I don't think anything's going to happen. I mean, the NATO has 5,000 troops in Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and as you said, they have nothing in Ukraine technically. I'm sure they have advisors and they've sent material and arms and whatnot. But I don't think Russia's going to invade Ukraine. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms then of, I mean. We've discussed the. Oh yes, so we're talking about the EU. So we're still in Eastern Europe there. Let's talk about Merkel. Yeah, so Merkel is officially bowed out. Yes. She's now no longer the chancellor. The new guy's in. There was an interesting article from the New York Times which talked about his attempts, so the new guy's attempts to try and patch things up with the working class, the German working class. So I'm just going to read a bit of that to you. So the new guy's Scholz, of course, Olaf Scholz. I mean, people describe him as being center-left, kind of East, German center-left character. We mentioned this last week. So not necessarily the most exciting politics.
Yeah.
But let me just bring up this article for you. Let's see, COVID Germany and Schultz. One moment. Yes, here we go. Yeah, so the article talks about the fact that in some ways he's being seen as similar to Biden because he has to try and tame this working class majority, or who have been, I guess, who've been pushed over to sort of right-wing politics and trying the different methods to try and bring this guy back. But it also describes a bit of his history. So this Schultz guy used to be, I guess, it refers to as a socialist back in the 70s, and then sort of as he got older, moved further to the center, and of course then became a technocrat, and then some even called him a hyper-technocrat. And he then has now allegedly been going further left, going left again, in order to capture this working class vote. And the mechanisms that he's been using apparently to capture the working class is, sort of more social spending, and particularly in light of COVID, because of people realizing that society actually runs on essential workers and the important role that they play, rather than the elites that
and their hedge funds whilst sitting uselessly at home.
Yes, exactly. Mechanisms to support essential workers is what they're categorizing as his attempts, his left-leaning attempts. But that's kind of a summary of Olaf Scholz, who he is at the moment. A very short one, so we'll see what he's like. But we have a wonderful song that Merkel requested to be played. So she had 3 songs, and usually, a head of state will play something quite, I guess, traditional, maybe some classic music, some Bach, who knows. In this case, we had a great piece of East German punk rock music, which I'll share with you now, which she got requested. This is what she got. So let's just put this in the stream. 1 second, I have to drop you out there. Okay. Can we see that, Jen? Can you see that? Yeah, so this is the artist. I'll play a bit so we can hear it.
Oberautomobil und du hast den Fahrtwind vergessen. Wo stand der Kanton am Strand von Hiddensee? Micha, mein Micha und alles tat so weh. Dass die Kaninchen scheu schauten auf dem Bau. So laut und blutig, mein Leib ist himmelblau.
There we go. That's a piece of
whatever that's supposed to mean.
So yeah, that was so the name of the song is Du hast den Farbfilm vergessen from 1985. That was Nina Hagen. Yeah, and obviously everyone was raising their eyebrows at this one here, this choice of song. Interesting. Certain aspect. So the funny thing was that obviously it was a military band, had to play that
right
tune, and they were kind of struggling. And additionally, I mean, we're not going to show the footage now, but the band itself was quite curious. Jen had seen this one before, but the band plays in helmets that are a bit too similar for my liking to the traditional sort of Nazi sort of helmet that you would see, one that we all know seen in films. So they wear those kind of helmets, and then they hold sticks, flaming torches, while they play music. So yeah, pretty strange.
In gray colored parade uniforms.
Yeah. So,
that are very reminiscent of.
Yeah, I think the song adds to it now. So we've got an East German punk rock band song played by the flaming torch carrying stormtrooper helmet wearing soldier band. Yeah, which is quite fun. But yeah, so Merkel's out and Olaf's in, and we'll see what that means. I don't expect to see anything revolutionary, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay. We've already mentioned Khashoggi arrests. So there was an arrest of a Saudi Arabian man, by the French authorities in relation to the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which took place obviously in Istanbul, where he was butchered basically. But yeah, we haven't got much more information about that, so we'll see what happens. What comes of that, we'll see if maybe testifies and brings new information and evidence to that story. Let's talk about the COVID quickly, just briefly. We don't want to go too much in this because it's a story that everyone is hearing about all the time. So we obviously now have Omicron, and the more information is coming out about Omicron. And as you were saying, Jen, it's not as deadly, still extremely contagious, but the information is saying that it's not as deadly. And however, bad news is we will need booster jabs. So Pfizer came out today and said that you will most likely need booster jabs in order to really combat Omicron, which effectively means revaccination. I mean, people are calling it a booster jab.
Right.
That's revaccination, right?
We'll continuously to be able to need that. Because, again, going back to the attrition thing kind of mentioned in the last episode, this week it was discovered that Omicron has a lot of similarities with variants coming out of rats. So this is it's suspected by a lot of scientists. This is a case of human to rat transmission, and then rats retransmitting to humans. Infecting animals is nothing strange. We've talked about the tigers and lions in New York Zoo, and the minks. If I recall correctly, the Denmark government had this whole thing of after they tested 30-something minks tested positive in Denmark. This was a full year ago, maybe even more. More than a year ago, the Denmark government just kind of moved in and killed every single last one of those minks that were going to be harvested for fur, and it's like a huge pillar of export of the Danish economy. So a lot of farmers lost a lot of money, and some lost their livelihoods because of that. So with this kind of situation, what we're seeing is similarity. So the rats in the sewers of New York City there are tens of billions of rats in the tunnels of these big American cities. So that's just a very, very nightmarish scenario that and in the rural areas we have deers. So at this point, the good news is coming out of these are all pre kind of publishing databases from information from MedR, XIV, and SAMRC, these official scientific sources, basically saying yes, it's less lethal according to the ICU data for now. We still need 2 more weeks to find that to be sure about that, but for sure, it is through all these animal mutations and then reinfecting humans able to just completely bypass pre-developed immunity, and also it has an unbelievable amount of extremely rare mutations on the spike protein. So the efficacy of mRNA vaccines is solely dependent on which segment of the genes of the original COVID variant provided by China to the WHO that you selected to make your vaccine off of. We just don't know enough to know have we did essentially Pfizer, Moderna, etc. hit jackpot, or did everyone screw up and we need a brand new vaccine? We just don't know.
Right. Well, I guess it's still, Omicron is still brand new. I don't think we're going to have a lot of information quickly, but we are getting. It's been 2 weeks now, I think, since we had a Omicron. So we know that it's less lethal. We know that we do need booster jabs, but it's pretty worrying that the animal transmission is a problem, and particularly if we had imagined if there was a massive outbreak, got into cattle or into chickens, and they had to kill all that stock, it would affect the food, or it just killed the animals. So it would be we're talking about food systems then. We're talking about a global
you're
pandemic.
talking about complete collapse.
yeah,
I
no,
mean,
that's
for
pretty.
New York City alone, I've been there personally four times. Two, this is a bit anecdotal, I know, but like you would see like rats just like coming out of the sewers, grabbing a slice of pizza, and just then run off, and nobody would like be surprised.
Yes,
They'll just be like, "Oh, how
it's fine.
cool!"
Yeah, right.
How are you going to fix that?
Yeah, that's a pretty bad situation.
Quarantine rats? Like, excuse
Yeah, I
me?
mean,
Just
what we're
listen to the
talking about,
sound of that.
we're talking about the classic. That's the classic, bubonic plague, the Black Death. That's rats spreading a killer disease. That would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
But let's move away from COVID. I think we're all tired of talking about COVID.
Mhm.
So this Palestinian jailbreak. So yes, so technically the actual jailbreak itself happened. 1 second. Yeah, the actual jailbreak itself wasn't, this week, but the 6 guys who broke out went on trial this week. That's the story. There is that they've gone to court. I'm just trying to find the story for you now. 1 second. Yeah, but when they broke out back in September, it really shocked the Israeli system. So yeah, 6 guys. They've appeared in court this week, and they tunneled out in September. And this prison is, it's Israel's like maximum security prison. It's the supreme symbol of its, I guess, of the authoritarian side of the Israeli state. Well,
I mean, it's an apartheid state. What do we want?
Obviously, it's got apartheid state. And of course, it's jailing these guys, for the 5 of the 6 for carrying out or planning deadly attacks. That's the reason they're in there and whatnot. But it was a pretty dramatic story because it really shook the confidence of the Israeli security apparatus and the system that these guys had managed to, just dig out of their best prison with some spoons and whatever they could get in jail and get out. And they were gone for days. Then it wasn't like they just caught them straight away. They got out and they were on the run for a long time. Obviously, they have also all been caught now and will probably go back. But it really, it gives some hope, I guess, to the Palestinians in the sense that all of these kinds of states, all apartheid states, rely on the idea of being invincible, the idea of being undefeatable. So that 5 men using basic implements could overcome and essentially liberate themselves, break out of jail, just using basic implements. Really shakes that idea of invincibility. Yeah. With all the money, all of that technology, all the drones and cameras and funding from the US, they were still able to free themselves at least for a short bit. But yeah, any comments on that one?
Not too much. Just besides, coming from the Chinese perspective, what the Israelis and the Americans are doing in Palestine, the entire region, Afghanistan, so on and so forth. Is very reminiscent of what the imperialist militarist Japan was doing in China ever since the 1930s. And the reason, and from an attrition perspective, like you said, the kind of imperialist occupation is always going to be way more costly than the resistance of the local people. Yes. Both from just like a macroscopic and a microscopic perspective.
Yeah.
And that is why kind of, I think we talked last week about Netanyahu's concern about the fall of the U.S. empire and how that's going to be extremely severe for Israel, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So, because the fact that the kind of Palestinian people are still kind of doesn't give up on resistance for both kind of conceptual and geopolitical reasons, because they do have Middle Eastern countries that do support them, local actual nations that actually support them. This is not going to be the end of it. I mean, during the Hamas rocket retaliation, if people remember back to that,
Yeah.
after the Israeli bombings, they basically shocked the whole world with the amounts of rockets that they were able to produce, even under such heavy sanction. And
Yes,
this is just a part of what it means to be, to have human ingenuity and to have that desire for, freedom and human dignity, essentially. So that conflict is not going to stop.
Sure. No, of course. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that fight is not over at all.
Yeah.
So speaking of jails, people going to jail, Aung San Suu Kyi, obviously down in Myanmar, having been sentenced again.
Yeah.
So I
For
do
4
feel,
years, I believe.
so let's go through here. So yes,
Mhm.
1 second. Oh, okay, they've reduced her sentence. Sorry. So okay, so actually on Monday, Aung San Suu Kyi, so the general who's now in charge of the junta, has reduced the sentence of Aung San Suu Kyi, reduced it on Monday to 2 years. After the court handed down a 4-year term only a few hours before. So they gave her 4, then they gave her 2. And of course, she's also allowed to serve out the remaining 40 months in the house that she's currently detained in. So obviously house arrest.
So house arrest instead of
the reason for the why she was locked up is the charges were for inciting public unrest, and breaching COVID-19 protocols. I'm not too sure if those are the actual reasons. But she's also facing other charges, so it's not like this is it. She's facing other charges that might keep her up for life. 9 more charges. So it's not looking good for her. She's kind of back. I mean, essentially that story of Myanmar has gone back. I can't remember when she was released. What is it, 2015 maybe, that she came out of jail? So we've gone back essentially, let's say 10 years, because she was in jail for a very long time. So we've gone back. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. But this is a very interesting thing. If we talk about the regional politics that we mentioned at the start, that ethnic clash, the soldiers killing people in Nagaland in northeastern India, that borders Myanmar. And of course, Aung San Suu Kyi won the Nobel Peace Prize when, having been released, and they gave it to her, and she became sort of beacon. They were hoping she'd be the Mandela of Southeast Asia. But then she, didn't really come out and condemn when the military and when there were clashes against the Rohingyas, the Muslim minority in Myanmar. So, and all of those people, not all of them, many of them fled to East India and to Bangladesh. They're staying there now in a place called Cox's Bazar. So if we talk about this whole thing, it's an interesting situation. We've got the Muslim minority that's being pushed back and forth between India and between Myanmar. Aung San Suu Kyi wins the award. Now she goes against that sort of narrative of being the liberal liberator, and she's now back in jail. So it's quite a whirlwind, quite a series of events in the last 5 to 10 years of that situation. I don't really see what's going to happen with Myanmar. It seems that ASEAN is putting its pressure on, saying that it's a travesty of justice what's happened in Myanmar, and they must hold the line against this illegal takeover. I don't know if there'll be. I doubt there'll be an intervention. We've discussed this a few weeks ago about this idea that we shouldn't have interventions. Hopefully, the people of Myanmar can sort this out themselves, and just and a peaceful, good path can come out of it. But
I mean, that's gonna be. I know it sounds a bit useless for me to say this, which is it's gonna be extremely difficult, borderline impossible for something like that to happen. But the reason why is, from the Marxist perspective, without fundamental kind of leaps in either, our conception of the world, so like your theory that you're using, or material technology, resources and infrastructure and geopolitics and all that.
Mhm.
So, in order for a situation to be truly broken and something new and better to come out of it, there has to be a qualitative leap of either ideology and science and your methodology, or it has to be something material like the Industrial Revolution or some sort of pact, trade pact. One of the two things have to happen for, or else, like what we're seeing is kind of just this continuous pattern of regions, peoples, etc., just kind of stuck in this like wave, repetitive cycle, this kind of cyclical repetition of history. That's what usually happens in all human societies without that kind of leap. So at this stage, for the people of Myanmar, obviously we're not on the ground there, so we don't know all the details. But from just what we can see off of the internet, it seems very difficult. That very unlikely that something like that is going to arrive. I mean, One Belt One Road obviously offers an RCEP with between China, ASEAN, and Australia, New Zealand, Japan, so on and so forth. Obviously, can be a factor towards that. That can be helpful. But besides that, I really can't think of anything that you could even do to, from the macroscopic kind of strategic perspective, long-term perspective, to even change that situation for the better. I mean, intervention is certainly not going to help. We've seen that plenty of times. So I mean, we'll wait and see how that situation unfolds. But
we'll hope the best for them there. Let's finish off today with the U.S. situation, the U.S. shooting, I should say.
Right.
So this is I mean, I don't live in America, but school shootings, somehow that's a recurring piece of news in America. So every year we have our
speaking of cyclical repetitions.
Repetition. We have school shootings are just a thing that happen in America
on a weekly basis.
On a weekly basis. So this one though is interesting, right? So this is which state was this in, Jen?
Michigan.
Michigan, right? Yeah. And in this one, the parents actually. So this was someone who's underage, took his gun, which the parents had bought from, I assume, and
for Black Friday as a Christmas gift.
There we go, Black Friday Christmas gift. Okay, and he shoots 4 people, kills them, and then the parents were chased down by the authorities and arrested, which is different.
Yeah. They're being prosecuted for unintentional manslaughter, essentially. Because of how the argument goes, it's because how they just had like complete negligence when it comes to the safety of the gun, and was not responsible enough for the child to not do that. So long story short, the event kind of, the father took the son who did the shooting on Black Friday sales to a gun store and bought a 6-hour pistol for as a Christmas gift.
I think you said a $6 pistol, which actually doesn't even sound that crazy. Sorry, no, a 6-hour pistol. Okay.
So the kid after Thanksgiving holiday, going back to school. The teachers was concerned with him and called the parents and called the principal because he was like looking up kind of which brand of ammunition is the best for the gun in school. So they were concerned, right? So they called his mom, and well, guess what the mom said? She said that you just don't. All you need, just don't let the school catch you. There's nothing wrong. Just don't let the school catch you doing it.
What the hell?
And then after a few events, basically like the kid was like drawing some, cultish kind of thing about, the world has wronged me. The world is so evil. It's going to die. I see blood everywhere. That kind of shit. Just like doodling in class.
Yeah.
The school called the parents and demanded that the kid be taken home. And within 48 hours, the parents they wanted the parents to seek psychological help
Right.
for the child.
Right. Right.
They didn't. They didn't even take the kid home. And guess what happened next? The kid just walked into the bathroom, loaded up, and just started going.
See, I mean,
Um,
this is crazy. I mean, if you have
yeah, yeah.
all of the things that should have happened did. Like, so the idea that they saw the odd behavior beforehand, they notified someone, said, okay, hey, this guy's behaving irrationally, behaving like a crazy person. We need to, take him away and get him out of the situation. And all of the things that you think, if you're going to have guns, those are the measures you have in place. Okay, we'll
Right.
keep people under observation and try and get the gun away from them or get them away from a situation. Yeah, it just shows you the flaws in having that in that kind of that.
Right,
Even if you use in place, it's not enough.
Yeah, exactly. So why this one is specifically with the convicting the parents is unprecedented is that usually with school shootings here in America, they don't usually prosecute the parents with anything because yes, you bought the gun, but and technically you say it's a gift, but really like you have to prove that the parents wanted to kind of let the kid go use that gun to shoot other kids with, which of course that's not what the people want. But in this case, they prosecuted the parents with unintentional manslaughter, which is a charge that typically comes with like drunk driving, and when you run into and kill people, when you're driving under the influence. So this is obviously going to spark yet another useless round, cyclical repetition of kind of American liberals with this is so sad, we need gun control now, versus American conservatives, which will range I can only foresee two arguments really. Like one, yeah, it's sad, but don't take away guns because freedom. Or two, if only the teacher or some kid in the school had a gun too. I mean, that's the typical American right wing argument.
That's it. Yeah.
Pick one,
If only another child had a gun. Exactly.
Right.
That's would have solved this problem. A good kid with a gun. Don't stop a bad kid with a gun is a good kid with a gun. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's enough for this week. We've actually been pretty good with our timekeeping. We're a little bit over, but that's okay. You can catch us this time next week, the same week every week. We're always here for this show. This weekend we might have an Ethiopian communist on to discuss. So we'll stream this as well as it be on the podcast. An Ethiopian communist to discuss the situation in Ethiopia. With the Tigray situation and what we should call the civil war. And also he will be talking about the sort of older, sort of more political sort of history of Ethiopia too. So please just keep an eye out for that, and we'll share that and stream that too this weekend. But if not, then we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, Jin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.